Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashatari Shatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatade Shatarine
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Jnanatimirandasya
Jnananjana Shalakaya
Chakshurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavaksha Shri Rupam Savijatam Savana Vandatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Dalika Shri Vishakam Vikamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusude Devi Paramami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nidhi Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatarishtarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, which verses are we reading today?
13, 8 through 12.
8 through 12. Yes, we are making our way. I think today we may finish this set of 5 verses. Very beautiful verses. We've been discussing many different processes of acquiring knowledge. What is the purpose of knowledge? What's the purpose of knowledge?
Need some intelligence.
What do we do with knowledge that we acquire?
Gain some intelligence to do some activity.
Yeah, we use knowledge to gain something, right? I know how to use, I have some knowledge about how to drive a car. I gain the ability to move from point A to point B very nicely. Right? So, we have different values of knowledge, right? If I know whether it's raining outside or not, is that valuable knowledge? Yeah.
Depends on what you're doing. What
It could help
activity.
you, right?
Yeah.
If I have knowledge of how to solve or cure COVID, is that valuable knowledge? Yeah.
Yeah.
right? It has the power to help. Right? If I have knowledge of tomorrow's lottery numbers, is that valuable?
Yes.
So we understand knowledge in terms of its potency to help us achieve something of value. Right? So we go through our life acquiring so much knowledge. and you read a newspaper, and there's endless numbers of knowledge on there. In there. So what is the ultimate goal of all knowledge? What is the goal of all knowledge? To give us what?
Happiness.
Happiness. That's the goal of all knowledge. To give us happiness. A knowledge that gives us more happiness, we would consider to be more
Valuable.
and knowledge that gives us less happiness would be considered knowledge of less.
Value.
So what kind of value would we put on knowledge that gives us eternal happiness?
Priceless.
Isn't that what the goal of all of human life? So this processes of knowledge is meant to give us the most valuable knowledge, which can result in the most valuable of achievements, eternal happiness and service of Lord Krishna. So there are many different qualities of knowledge that have been, processes of knowledge that have been discussed. And we said, which one is the most important? Anybody remember?
Approaching a bona fide spiritual master.
Close. Prabhupada says, of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse. That which terminates in
Spiritual life.
unalloyed
Devotional service.
devotional service, right? Constant devotional service. This is the most valuable of knowledge, right? And how do we come into acquiring this knowledge? By the second
By
most?
approaching a spiritual master.
By approaching a spiritual master, right? So this is the most important and topmost knowledge. So we've discussed many different qualities of knowledge. We have talked about tolerance, simplicity. Anybody remember what simplicity means? The meaning of simplicity?
Not having double standards.
Yeah. Being straightforward, right? Not being duplicitous.
Yes, sir.
Playing games with systems.
Hypocrite of truth to your enemy.
Huh?
Tell the real truth to your enemy.
Yeah. Right? So straightforward that you would even tell the truth to an enemy.
Yeah.
That is a quality of simplicity.
Not being hypocritical.
Not being hypocritic. Or delving into hypocrisy. So, these aspects are very, very powerful. We talked about cleanliness, right? Cleanliness of what?
Mind,
Mind and
body.
body.
Thank you.
Yes, both are important, right? We talked about steadiness. Then we talked about detachment from family. So how did we understand this very important topic? Detachment from family? What does that mean?
Not be overly attached to the family, to the extent that you get so much entangled in the material world itself, and forget about Krishna.
Yeah. And how should we be connected to our family? In what context?
Serve them as a service to Krishna.
As a
Krishna
service to
is
Krishna. So we serve and love our family in connection with our service to Krishna. So our attachment to family is there, very natural. But it should be connected to the attachment to Krishna. Right? So now we'll read the next, let's read the whole verse first, and then we'll continue reading for the third one. Anybody would like to read the verses first? Good. Thanks for volunteering.
I humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place detached from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of the self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance.
Krishna is making a very statement that's very black and white. Besides this, what is everything? Ignorance. So next time you go to a library, and it is full of volumes and volumes of books, you understand, ultimately, it is ignorance because it doesn't remind us of what fact. Any book you go into the library, unless they've been blessed by Srila Prabhupada's books, they contain knowledge about matter, the body.
Mundane stuff.
And that all is in ignorance of knowing who I am. Right? So that statement sounds a little bit strong, but actually is very factual. As Prabhupada said, when he toured the campus of the university, I see so many departments, biology department, philosophy department, math department, English, history. Where's the soul department? Where are you teaching your students about? The spirit soul. Doesn't exist. Right? So that is the nature of knowledge. So much variety. This is the knowledge that actually can lead to perfection of life. Okay, so let's read from page 542, beginning with happiness and distress. We'll read that paragraph and discuss.
Happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. One should learn to tolerate as advised in Bhagavad Gita. One can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress, so one should be detached from the materialistic way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. Generally, when we get something desirable, we are very happy, and when we get something undesirable, we are distressed. But if we're actually in the spiritual position, these things will not agitate us. To reach that stage, we have to practice unbreakable devotional service. Devotional service to Krishna without deviation means engaging oneself in the 9 processes of devotional service: chanting, hearing, worshipping, offering respect, etc., as described in the last verse of the 9th chapter. That process should be followed.
Okay. So happiness and distress. Anybody experiences happiness and distress? Few of us? You all are only happy? Blessed. So, these happiness and distress, what is it a function of? We were discussing a little bit last night about this, so don't repeat. But what is the source of our happiness and distress in this material world?
What you can, like, you want something and you can't have it.
But what causes it? What is the cause?
Desire.
Why do we get certain things that give us happiness and certain things that give us unhappiness? Is it random?
Because we are attached to this concept of body, and whatever we are getting is because of our karmic actions.
You want to enjoy.
It is our karmic reactions. Some good things happen, it's because that's a reaction to some past activity. Some bad thing happens, it is a reaction to some past activity. So one who has knowledge is even-minded amidst this happiness and distress. Why are they even-minded? We see this concept of equanimity. equipoise, right? Throughout Bhagavad Gita, Krishna in so many chapters is speaking about this as the characteristic of a great devotee. Starting from chapter 2, he mentions it. And says so many times. So here again,
That's the nature of the material world. It will
Okay.
come and go.
so one thing is, it is the nature of the material world. There's nothing you can do about it. Your past actions have already been done. So you're going to get some good things and some bad things. Lamenting them isn't going to change the results. Just like if it's raining outside, what is the point of lamenting that it's raining? There's nothing you can do to change that. So we have to respond accordingly. Right? So a devotee is even-minded. Right? And why is that important? Why is it important to be steady in mind amidst happiness and distress? What happens when we get some things that are very happy materially? Who do we forget often?
Krishna.
Krishna. We forget Krishna. I'm good for now. I'm okay. Things are good. Right? And when things are very difficult, what happens to our ability to concentrate on Krishna?
It also weakens.
It becomes disturbed. Because what is the mind meditating on?
Problem.
All the problems. Right? So, this happiness and distress in the material world, both sides, it takes our energy, our consciousness away from our spiritual life. So one who is trying to cultivate knowledge, they remain even-minded amidst happiness and distress. Does this mean a devotee is emotionless? They have no happiness? How to understand this even-mindedness amidst happiness and distress, yet we're supposed to be full of emotion, not like a stone. So how do we reconcile these two facts?
Understand that it's mercy of Krishna.
Huh?
Understand that it's the mercy of Krishna. Either way.
Okay, but that leads me to be neutral to that activity, understanding it is by the actions of Krishna.
Yes, we can have emotions and we should have emotions, everything related to Krishna. When we're serving Krishna, do it with all your enthusiasm. Connect everybody to Krishna, all the other souls. So your confidence, your enthusiasm, your love, everything is directed with Krishna center, then it's fine. If you're removing that in the equation, then.
So this happiness and distress Krishna is speaking about is on the material platform. But when we connect everything to Krishna, it is full of happiness. So one should be enthusiastic, as Mataji is saying, happy, fully committed, enjoying the service. So Krishna does not encourage us to be stone-like. He is simply saying, tune out the material ups and downs. They are not relevant. They are not important in the context of my progress towards unalloyed devotion. Because if I start to pay attention and become attached to the ups and downs of the material world, my mind will become deviated from Krishna. So Krishna is not saying, you should be very stoic, no happiness, no distress, no emotion. No, that's not this. He's saying, to all the material ups and downs, let them go. They're going to happen. Again, what is the source of why are we facing some good things in our life? Because of what? Good karma. Why are we facing some bad things in our life? Simple as that. So when I walk and I stub my toe against a wall, whose fault is it? My own. My own. Something I did in the past. The devotee has faith in the system of Krishna, this karmic system. And when the devotee gets happiness, what is their view? How do they view that happiness?
You don't deserve it.
They don't deserve it. But it is simply the
Mercy.
mercy of Krishna. And when something bad happens, how do they view that? They also view that as mercy. Why mercy?
It could have been a lot worse, but
It could have been a lot worse. Based on my past, I deserve so much more. But Krishna is lessening my suffering out of his love. And what is the second reason the devotee views it as mercy?
Also, I don't know if it's right. Also, a reminder to us, like, Krishna is like gently reminding us, like, to mend our ways.
Yes. Yes. It is a nice reminder. This is not a place to find happiness. So instead, take to the process of devotional service. So devotee is very grateful. But most people, when good things happen, we take the credit. When bad things happen, Krishna, you didn't help me. But that is not the mindset of the devotee. The devotee says, when good things happen, Krishna is unlimitedly merciful. And when bad things happen, I did so much worse and Krishna is lessening. That's actually the fact. But the material-oriented person has it backwards. Right?
And that's actually a fact also, sorry for me. So that's also actually a fact, right?
Yes.
That could have been such more, but
Yes.
because we,
Aham tvam sarva papebhyo, Krishna says. I deliver you from your sinful reactions. So whatever we're experiencing is just being some minimized portion. Right? There could have been much more. Queen Kunti prays calamity after calamity. Why? Because it intensifies her surrender to Krishna. When she is in the most difficult of times, as my surrender and meditation on you is intensified. When things are good, I get lax. So better I have calamity after calamity. How many of us have bowed down to Radha Kunjayari and prayed, Krishna, one more calamity? Anyone has ever prayed that way? No. Not that we should pray that way, I also, but we understand the point, the mood, which is to surrender to Krishna. So the second half of the paragraph, if we remain undisturbed by material happiness and material distresses, undisturbed, then what is the result? What can we do? What does that allow us to do?
focus on serving Krishna.
Focus on serving Krishna, devotional service. And what kind of, how would we describe that type of devotional service?
Unalloyed.
Huh?
Unalloyed.
Unalloyed. So no material desires, that is one very important. Not mixed. And?
undeviated.
Undeviated. Constant. Why constant? Because I'm not being disturbed. If it's raining or sunny out, I'm still fixed in my bhakti. Stock market is up or down. I have lots of friends on Facebook or none. Doesn't matter. I am attached to my Krishna. So by being equipoised materially, one is able to become undeviated and unalloyed in bhakti. See how they go hand in hand? They go together. So this is one of the, and we said the most important. Right? And so the Krishna Prabhupada says, now to become undisturbed in material happiness and distress. How many of us would like to be of that position, that strength? You know? How to do it? What does Prabhupada say? How can one become such even-minded? What do we have to do?
Follow the 9 processes.
Prabhupada says specifically, to reach that stage, what do we have to do?
Practice unbreakable.
Practice unbreakable devotional service. So by practicing devotional service, one will naturally purify of all the material desires. One will acquire knowledge of how one should become detached from all these material ups and downs. Right? So it is both the cause and the effect. So this is how one becomes. And what types of devotional service, what are the different ways in which we engage in devotional service? How Prabhupada quotes
Chanting.
chanting. What else? Hearing, worshiping.
Being of the respect.
Right? The 9 processes of devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtan, Vishnu Smaranam, Vandanam, Archanam, Adasena, Dasim, Sakyam, Atma, Nivedana. So these 9 processes of devotional service are different ways in which we can engage in devotional service. It's not even one-dimensional. Prabhupada writes in Srimad Bhagavatam that one can practice any of these 9 singularly and achieve perfection. They're all potent. Of course, chanting and hearing are very, very powerful for us. We'll move on in the interest of time. Let's read the next paragraph.
Naturally, when one is adapted to the spiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic men. That would go against his grain. One may test himself by seeing how far he is inclined to live in a solitary place without unwanted association. Naturally, a devotee has no taste for unnecessary sporting or cinema going or enjoying some social function because he understands that these are simply a waste of time. There are many research scholars and philosophers who study sex life or some other subject, but according to Bhagavad Gita, such research work and philosophical speculation have no value. That is more or less nonsensical. According to Bhagavad Gita, one should make research by philosophical discretion into the nature of the soul. One should make research to understand the self. That is recommended here.
So, why does the devotee not have desire to mix with materialistic folks?
Doesn't have taste for it.
Doesn't have taste for it. Because what is Prabhu Krishna says earlier, right? What is night for the materialist is day for the spiritualist, and what is day for the spiritualist is night for the materialist. The interests are completely opposite. The devotee is interested in glorifying Krishna, and the materialist is interested in glorifying something else. Doesn't matter what it is. Right? So the devotee, Prabhupada uses the word naturally. Very interesting word. He uses the word naturally. Which means this doesn't happen by some strong penance or austerity to renounce. The taste for such association dissipates by experiencing the higher taste of devotional association. Sometimes when we come to devotional life, we lose certain relationships, or they become less prominent. We also gain many other relationships, and somehow those seem to be more fulfilling because the interests are aligned. Right? So we talk about the importance of association. Association is very important in our devotional service. Maintaining good association can inspire strong and successful practice in devotional service. But maintaining bad association can also dampen, hinder our progress in devotional life. It cuts both ways. Right? When the devotee asked Prabhupada, how I can become sincere in devotional service? Prabhupada said very simply, if you want to be a drunkard, associate with drunkards. If you want to be a devotee, associate with devotees. Not so difficult. Right? So association is very, very important.
Jeevan, one
Yeah.
question is, like, is there two reasons or just one reason? Just one reason, like you said, the devotee doesn't want to associate with the materialistic men. One, because of the higher taste, they don't have interest. But could it also be also the reason that devotee also understand that Maya is so strong that you can get captivated by that Maya anytime. So the devotee himself or herself doesn't feel that they may be so strong that they can withstand Maya under all circumstances. So therefore it's better to avoid just going in the cave of death. You know that it's wrong, so why you want to venture into it? Can we consider that like it's the two things rather than just giving up and saying higher taste, or is it just
They're in two different stages. So the perfected pure devotee, they have no risk of falling, but they still don't associate because there's no interest. Their tastes are fully purified. For the sadhaka, they have not yet fully acquired the perfected state, so they follow Rupa Goswami's instructions. Right? He says, Jana Sangha. One should avoid all worldly association. Why? Vinashyati, it destroys your bhakti. In verse 2 he says. Right? So one should abandon worldly, because you're right. One, by associating there, can become tempted by those activities if one has not fully solidified themselves in bhakti. So even if there is some taste still remaining, the sincere devotee says, I better not be tempted by such activities. Because that temptation, through Maya, it's very potent. And so the sadhaka is very careful to protect their bhakti and to protect it in a way it does not become influenced by anything. Right? So we can understand it, because sometimes in the sadhana there's still some taste for those activities. But we know it's not good for me. It's not good for me. So, yes, they're both there. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Research. How much research is done in the world?
So much.
I was hearing one radio program, it was like a year ago, and I was stunned. This lady was giving an interview. I think I mentioned this once. So it was on a national radio program, and she was some PhD. And she was doing like 20 years of research. That's a big chunk of their life. And what she was researching, that she was so being widely acclaimed for, the migration of sheep across Europe in like the mid-centuries. I thought to myself, wow, someone is dedicated. It was interesting how she found different movements of sheep through paper that were found in libraries that had some genetic material that could age. And it was very expertly done, intelligent, like very intelligent research.
Only they could have concentrated her intelligence to they could have been right nowhere.
So the intelligence is there, but what is the value, the outcome of that? What do we gain by it? I know how sheep moved 500 years ago in Europe. Right? So the point is, she had a very wonderful ability. And Prabhupada says that ability should be used, not thrown away, but used for a higher purpose. And what is the highest purpose of our research? What should we research?
How to serve Krishna to the best of.
It says one should research into the nature of the soul. And that will lead us to service of Krishna. Right? So much research is going on. But we really wonder, what is the ultimate value of that research? It's limited. But if we use that ability and use it in Krishna's service, then something great can happen, right? Right, let's read one more paragraph.
As far as self-realization is concerned, it is clearly stated here that Bhakti Yoga is especially practical. As soon as there is a question of devotion, one should consider the relationship between Supersoul and the individual soul. The individual soul and the Supersoul cannot be one, at least not in the Bhakti conception, the devotional conception of life. This service of the individual soul to the Supreme Soul is eternal, Nitya, as it is clearly stated. So bhakti, or devotional service, is eternal. One should be established in that philosophical conviction.
So we only have one job on our resume. We only have one major from the university we studied. We only have one qualification, one ability. And what is that? Service to what? Huh?
Supreme Soul, Krishna.
Service to Krishna. That is our eternal, Nitya job. That is it. So when we say self-realization, what does self-realization mean? We use this term a lot. What does self-realization mean?
Understanding our relationship with Krishna and who we are, basically.
Understanding my relationship to Krishna. Realizing the role of myself in relation to everything else. That's it. So self-realization means to know I am the eternal servant of Krishna. And that is an eternal fact. In a temporary fact, I may be an engineer, I may be a doctor, I may be a laborer, I may be male, I may be female, I may be tall, short. These are all temporary designations. But my eternal designation is servant to Krishna. Right? So this is self-realization. Okay? So let's read the next paragraph.
In Srimad Bhagavatam, this is explained. Those who are actually knowers of the absolute truth know that the self is realized in three different phases, as Brahman, as Paramatma, and as Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the last word in the realization of the absolute truth. Therefore, one should reach up to that platform of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus engage in the devotional service of the Lord. That is the perfection of knowledge.
So the conclusion of our knowledge should bring us to realizing Bhagavan. If we have realized Brahman, keep going. If we realize Paramatma, keep going. And once we have realized Bhagavan, that is the ultimate and absolute truth. Right? Okay. Final paragraph.
Beginning from practicing humility up to the point of realization of the Supreme Truth, the Absolute Personality of Godhead. This process is just like a staircase beginning from the ground floor going up to the top floor. Now on the staircase there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second floor or third floor, etc. But unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at a lower state of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual life, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. To think oneself God is puffed up. Although the living entity is always being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks I am God because of his ignorance. The beginning of life is therefore humility. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth.
So what is the beginning of trying to acquire knowledge?
Humility.
If a student goes into the classroom and thinks, I know everything, will they receive any knowledge?
No.
The student must go in accepting the fact, I don't know. I don't know. Then knowledge can be received. If 10 students are in a room, teacher is speaking the same thing. But based on one's acceptance that I need to learn, realization will happen in different degrees. But teacher is speaking one. Right? So similarly, our success in acquiring this knowledge, not just acquiring it, but realizing it, is based on humility. So the more mood of humility in which we approach this knowledge, we'll have success. If we try to think, I am God, and compete, we'll only be frustrated by our attempts to lord it over, as Prabhupada says. So the beginning process of knowledge is humility. And that is the first process that we discussed in the very beginning, several weeks ago. And Prabhupada concludes this, 4-page purport with humility. Okay? Any questions or comments to it?
Developing.
Huh?
Like just developing association. How to develop a good association.
How to develop a good association? Well, association, one we understand to be very important in our process of devotional service. We should be careful to pick good association that is beneficial for our process of bhakti. And good association means that we maintain good, loving, reciprocal relationships with devotees. Sometimes, we forget in our busyness of service to maintain nice, loving relationships, reciprocal relationships, being caring, and these qualities of bhakti. Remembering that Krishna is most pleased when we render service to his devotees, more so than to even him directly. So, in association, we maintain loving relationships. We become tolerant. Yes, some things may not go exactly as we hope. If we approach those relationships with humility, there will never be any disturbance. I don't remember who said this, but I don't remember who said it. But if everyone is humble, all the problems in the temple go away. No problem. If everyone is humble. I think Guru Maharaj mentioned that once in the class. So we approach those relationships with humility and appreciation of how important those relationships are in our devotional service. Then we can maintain good, healthy association. Anything else?
Could you elaborate on that association and reciprocal relationship which you're talking about? Can you just elaborate on that part a little bit?
Which part?
This association only, like you're saying the reciprocation of that relation you should have. What do you mean by the reciprocation there, and what are the steps like a little bit?
The steps are that,
Because life is busy for many people, right? So how do we do that and make that as a priority, and what are we really talking about?
and again, it's not quantity, it's quality. right? So, when we have an opportunity for association, of course, yeah, everyone's busy, we have so many responsibilities, maybe so many services to attend to, managing different temple activities, we get busy. But don't get so busy that we forget that we're having the opportunity to render service in the association of other devotees. And so to be caring and loving in those relationships, to be, mindful of what this devotee would like, or how I can help please this devotee in their service. Setting aside sometimes our own desires, our own objectives, and helping to facilitate those of others in our association. When a devotee is in need, instead of thinking, that's their conditioned nature, thinking, no, let me go and help in whatever way we can be, again, practically and capable. Because, again, sometimes when we get busy, we forget to be personal. We become impersonal. So there's times where that happens, but, maintaining nice, loving relationships, friendships, speaking to devotees in a loving, caring, compassionate way. How are you doing? Is everything okay? Simple things, but truly being interested. We see devotees them up and up. But what is the mood we're actually approaching? Or we may, experience something. So the association, there should be loving exchanges.
Genuine.
Yeah, genuine. Yeah, and again, they don't have to be, remember, quality over quantity. Right? So maintain nice, loving relationships. Be respectful of all devotees, and try to help each other in devotional service. Sometimes we get competitive. I want to do this service, and we get competitive versus helping each other and working together as a team. Again, surrendering our own desires and wants for the whole goal of pleasing Krishna. Right? So, we see someone who's by themselves, not, maybe mingling, we can go and give them some association, help bring them into whatever group we may be in. Having a warm heart. It's the intrinsic nature of the soul. So, but sometimes, in our bhakti and devotion, we forget to interact and associate with devotees in that way. And if you see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, you see wonderful devotee association. You see how the devotees serve together, they enjoy together, they play together, they do so many wonderful activities together. It's a nice, example for that. And, being tolerant. Sometimes we have such high expectations. Be tolerant. Other devotees are also busy. They're also, so they may not reciprocate with us the way we need. Shouldn't hold grudges. They didn't do this to me. They didn't call me on my birthday. They didn't do this. They didn't, respect me the way I should. They should be tolerant. Understand? So giving all this, but being tolerant on the other end. We should not hold grudges, thinking I am worthy of some, emotion from something. Namani namani dena. Not expecting any respect, but offering to all. So those are some ways in which we can maintain very sweet and loving relationships with the ones. It's important. It's one of the blissful parts of devotional service.
very pleasing to Krishna.
Yeah, and it's very inspiring to us. It keeps us in bhakti.
Mm.
It keeps us energized. We need the help of others. And we're all relying on each other for devotional service. So that's.
I have a question along the lines of that too. Like, if you're in a relationship with like another devotee and you're giving association and trying to give, but the reciprocation is not returned, you know, you just be tolerant, or do you and then wonder if there's expectation from the other party to, you know, for like reciprocation, but they don't give reciprocation. How does that work?
How it works is
Just be tolerant.
tolerant like a tree. If you don't glorify a tree, does it still give you shade? Whether you glorify or not, the tree serves you. So we should serve all devotees regardless of how they give or not give back to us. I'll only give to you if you give to me. That's a dog mentality. When a dog barks to me, I bark back. So we're not like that. That takes humility, because the ego is crushed. I deserve better. I'm doing all this and they're not doing anything back. Now, of course, there are practical also limitations. We should be careful not to get into exploitive relationships. That can sometimes happen. But our mood should not be, I'll do if they do. That mentality we have to crush. Because then we become fruitive in our even bhakti. I'll do if something good comes back to me. Okay? So our mood should be, for the pleasure of Krishna, I'll render service to the devotees. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
You have a follow-up question? It seems.
Just struggling with like the fact, you know, like you give yourself in the relationship, and you know, they may or may not give back. Fine, you know, we can be tolerant and we continue in putting into that relationship, but you know, then, you know, if others don't give into that relationship, and then I don't know.
Yeah, you can't force a relationship.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? You can't force a relationship. So if someone is not reciprocating back, it's okay. Don't hold animosity against a person, though. But you may, find other friendships, but we don't become, we don't abandon that person in our heart. That is the main thing. Because we also need some reciprocation, right? We need love from others too. We were discussing a little bit yesterday that we need warmth in our relationship. We're not such in a purified state. When Prabhupada came, he had no warmth, if you think about it from a relationship standpoint, when he first got here. Very difficult. Imagine being 1 or 2 years with just not many personal relationships, right? Someone was here. It's difficult. But he was on a Paramahamsa stage, right? So we need some warm, supportive relationships. So we should seek them out also, foster them, and also give them, right? So again, we're not in that perfected stage where that is not necessary for us. So the devotee association we should seek out, and if someone is not reciprocating with us, it's it's okay. Don't hold a grudge against that person. It might be something. Okay, no problem. But often we start to think ill of that person. That we should be very careful. Often it is our own doing. But even if it's not, it doesn't matter. I shouldn't even say often it is our doing. Sometimes it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with something, not some other circumstance. But you may choose to engage in a different relationship. Make sense?
Yeah, follow up
Yeah.
with Mataji's.
I'm going back to the part.
Like you're talking about lack of reciprocation. If you don't get reciprocation, you try. Then could it be also that we kind of stop reciprocating not for the reason that we are having an animosity against that person? We continue to pray for that person, but maybe the person wants it that way, that to keep at that distance for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So is that okay?
Yeah, you're respecting their space.
Suspecting the space.
You're respecting their desire. For whatever reason. It may be good intention or bad, it's okay. You're respecting that space that they're asking and you're reciprocating, we keep distance.
So lack of reciprocation could be meaning that person wants space?
I don't know. Don't know. Not so.
Or maybe I'm not trying too hard? Is that also could be the reason?
Could be many reasons. But if it's a relationship we are really trying to foster, we find out, we inquire. If they're not ready to engage in that, then we respectful distance, that's the desire. Right? Sometimes we have to distance ourselves from certain association because it's not good for us. Because it's not, in the position to help us. But we don't need to create a distaste for that, right? So sometimes we have to protect ourselves also. But that's not, that's a practical application. And then we have to put ourselves in a position to be able to continue making progress in devotional life. But in doing so, we don't again create a sense of that animosity also. But why someone is not reciprocating with us in a relationship? I don't know. Tolerate. And be simple. If we approach these relationships with simplicity, straightforwardness, then things are easy. Oftentimes, when that doesn't happen, it becomes complicated, difficult to, there's gamesmanship, manipulations, and they happen, and often we don't see it ourselves. That is it. I don't know if I'm answering either of your questions.
I think you did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Shri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Prabhupada ki Vaishnavi ki
Jai.